The first time I had ever heard or seen Pat Boone, I was a little kid watching television, and his movie April Love came on one Saturday afternoon, and I must have went around the house singing that song in a squeaky little voice for 2 months. Later in life, I realized that April Love was just part of a vast musical legacy of 45 million record sales, including 38 top 40 hits, popular movies and television shows and books. Pat Boone is a music legend, and he's just put together a package called the Pat Boone Legacy Collection to commemorate his 60 years in show business. There's a coffee table book, a DVD of television performances, a new gospel CD, a CD and vinyl album of wonderful duets, and this legacy package comes with everything but a pair of white bucks. Mr. Pat Boone, welcome to the show.
Well, good to be with you. You did a great job. That's a mouthful.
It is.
And it is some of the fruit of a 60-something year career. I still am shocked when I hear myself say that, because I feel like I'm still the, maybe 25, 30-year-old guy that was swept away by the success that did happen, starting when I was 20, still in college. Boy, the time is zooming, and the old saying, time flies when you're having fun, is sure accurate in this case, because it has been fun. I am totally, completely blessed.
It certainly is a blessing. And before we get to this legacy collection and delve into here, I should tell you that our radio station, WFDU-FM, broadcasts right into New York City, but we're based in Teaneck, New Jersey. And I understand you have something of a connection to Teaneck.
Well, yes, 730 Mildred Street was our home in Teaneck for about 5 years. When my career took off, I was in Denton, Texas, and Shirley and I had our first child already. I was barely 20. And it behooved us to get to the East Coast where I could live and, take advantage of what was going on career-wise. And we stayed in a hotel briefly, moved out to Leonia because I had to get away from the concrete and the high skyscrapers and the traffic of New York City. It's exciting, great place to be, but I wanted to be out where there was grass and trees.
Absolutely.
And, a neighborhood. So we wound up at 730 Mildred Street, lovely English Tudor house, and between three houses, the Champagnes on one side and the McAuliffes on the other, there were about 20 kids in those three houses.
Wow.
About before we left, we had 4 by the time we moved to California, but the Champagnes had 17, and the McAuliffe, he was a pediatrician, and he had 6. And he knew what was causing them, but but there were the 3 of us, 3 homes with over 20 kids.
Unbelievable. Well, you needed a ballpark.
We did, but Teaneck loved it, and so you emanate from Teaneck, huh?
Yes, absolutely. During that time, with your success on Dot Records and the Pat Boone Chevy Show on television, your rival was Elvis Presley, but as I understand it, you worked with Elvis before he became a phenomenon.
My opening act in Cleveland in 1955 in October was a kid that they brought up from Shreveport, Louisiana, named Elvis Presley. He had not recorded yet for RCA, but RCA Victor had bought his contract from Sun Records. And so Bill Randall, the DJ, wanted to know what he was like, and he had him fly up from Shreveport. He was appearing on the Louisiana Hayride, and he came out that night. I met him, and he came backstage. Already had a little entourage of about 3 guys with him, and I said, "Hi, Elvis. I'm Pat Boone." He said, "Nice to meet you." I said, "Bill Randall thinks you have maybe some big things ahead for you." "I don't know about that, but I hope so." and then he just kind of leaned back against the wall. His buddies closed in around him. I thought, boy, he's scared or something, or shy. And when he was introduced, Bill Randall gave him a big build-up. Nobody knew who he was. And he came out and he lip-synced, as they did at Sock Hops. Mm-hmm. He lip-synced both sides of his Sun record. One was Blue Moon of Kentucky, a Flatt and Scruggs bluegrass song. And the kids liked him the way he looked, but they didn't care for the song. But then when he finished that, they gave him a polite response. He said, "Well, thank you very much. I'd like to do the other side of that record for you. Hope you like it." And he did "That's All Right, Mama, That's All Right With Me," a rhythm and blues song, and they loved that and wanted more. But that's all he had. So he left. I came on. I had 3 hits at that moment, so I got the screams that night. But I had the good sense never to follow Elvis Presley again. And we became good friends, and we talked about that night many times. I said, were you scared that night or just shy? He said, well, I didn't know how to talk to you, man. I said, what do you mean? You were a star. I said, a star? I'd just been recording since March. yeah, but you were on the charts, and I considered you a star, and I didn't know how to talk to you. So socially, Elvis always had his little group around him and lived like public enemy #1 instead of the big star.
Right.
He couldn't go in. He felt he couldn't go anywhere in public, and if he wanted to see a movie, he would rent the theater eventually after midnight, or a bowling alley, or whatever else they wanted. He told me once when I was visiting with him backstage at the Hilton in Las Vegas, he said, I wish I could go to church like you do. I said, you can. No, I couldn't. He said, because kids want autographs and take pictures, and they would distract from the preacher. And I said, don't you think that's happened to me? You come in, you just sit down like everybody, and you tell the kids, I'll sign for you after church. And when they'll probably give you the church bulletins to sign, they'll take them to school, and their friends will say, where'd you get that? And at church. You mean Pat Boone or Elvis Presley was at your church? Can I come? I said, do that. I mean, it's a good thing. But he didn't. But he asked me if I knew Oral Roberts, and I said, yes, I do. And he said, I'd love to talk to him sometime. I said, let me give you a clue. Your name's Elvis Presley. You get on the phone. You call Oral Roberts University, say, I'm Elvis Presley. I'd like to talk to the president. In 15 seconds, Oral Roberts will be on the phone. And he said, I couldn't do it. I don't know him. And so I contacted Oral Roberts for him. And, of course, Oral flew out to meet with him. And they had an afternoon together, and so did Rex Humbard, because Elvis was spiritually hungry, and he and his family, when he was growing up, were church-going people.
That's true.
But he just felt he couldn't, and that's sad, because he could have. Particularly if he was going to the same church, people would have let him be there for the same reason they were.
And Sunday school enrollment would have gone up immediately.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, man, they'd have been building additions to the church. Sure, why not?
Speaking about partners and enemies and so forth, what's the Pat Boone situation with you? You know Pat.
Well, I know Pat very well. I didn't know anything about anything like that except when I read this Radio TV Mirror or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, they said Presley and Boone battled it out. Well, that's nothing. I mean, Pat Boone and I are very good friends.
And you're not fighting with Pat Boone?
Never. Pat's one of the nicest guys I ever met, and I'm sure I don't think he'd say anything bad about me.
Love Letters in the Sand, a #1 hit for our guest today, Pat Boone. You mentioned that Elvis Presley was at first nervous about meeting you. As I look at the duet partners on this collection, you have Ella Fitzgerald and Count Basie, Nat King Cole, the Kingston Trio. Now, obviously, you were just as big a star as these performers, but I bet you didn't see it that way. Were you ever intimidated or nervous about working with them?
I was not intimidated, but because in these cases, in the case of the Duets album, these are live performances. They were coming on my TV show, and I was stunned. I mean, I was so surprised that these legends already would be willing not only to come on the show, but learn something that my staff prepared and do duets with me and as equals. And all I did was really think and rehearse and do my very, very level best to do the best I could to try to match and stay with them. I mean, you imagine singing with Ella Fitzgerald, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do-what, 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 do-what,
sure.
Do-what. I had to count the do-whats on my fingers. Nobody could see that. If you watch the video, you can tell. But then there's a couple times when I improvise just a little bit, and you hear her on the record say, oh, yeah? Like, oh, okay, let's go. I mean, and Nat What a Gentleman, Nat Cole, and to sing Nature Boy with him, and then Poison Ivy, big pop hit at the time, and then to sing Stranger in Paradise with the great George Shearing.
Yes.
And then it seems to me I heard that song before with Count Basie, and him talking to me while I'm singing. You can hear him throwing in little ad-libs. The Kingston Trio and, oh goodness, Joe Stafford and Andy Williams and Connie Francis. I mean, I quickly realized that they do consider me up here, as astonishing as it was. I just wonder if there was something missing in my, they say stage fright is a sign of intelligence. And if I didn't have stage fright, then maybe I wasn't too bright. But I just somehow rose to the occasion. I guess at that point in my singing career, I had never knowingly hit a bad note. I'd never been given anything to sing that I couldn't do reasonably well with. So if they put it in front of me, I said, okay, I'll do it.
That was Pat Boone and Ella Fitzgerald from Pat Boone's new Duets collection. Someone you not only performed a duet with, but acted opposite. Happens to be a personal favorite of mine as a red-blooded American male, and that would be Ann-Margret.
Oh, yeah.
And and of course, you made the film State Fair.
Sure did.
With Ann-Margret.
Yeah.
I
miss that girl, too.
You are one lucky fellow there, let me tell you. What was that experience like, working on that?
Well, it turned out to be fun. She'd only made about 2 movies or 3 movies, and 20th was grooming her to be, the next Marilyn Monroe or something. And yet I saw her when I met her, and I saw her as Ann-Margret Olson off a farm in Illinois. I mean, that's who she was, and I wasn't buying into the sex kitten image that 20th was creating for her.
Right.
So, Bobby Darin was in the film, and other really good singers, artists. And so to me, Ann-Margret was, like the girl next door, trying to act like a sex queen.
Right.
But we hit it off right away, and when it came to our kissing scene, which was the first real kissing scene I ever did in the movie, it looked very real. But my wife had made me promise that if I was going to do kissing scenes in the movies, just promise me one thing: you won't enjoy it. So I said, okay, I promise. So I have to tell you that I didn't enjoy kissing Ann-Margret. You can believe that if you choose.
That was another #1 single on the Dot label for our guest today, Pat Boone, Don't Forbid Me, from December of 1956. We've been talking about this new Legacy collection, which comes with a Duets album and CD, a book, a DVD, and it includes a new gospel album, which is called Legacy. Now, as I look at my Baptist upbringing, I don't recognize the titles. Are these all new compositions?
Of course, yes. I wrote them all.
Oh, okay.
I wrote these are songs from my own worship and praise personal experiences. It won't surprise many people, I guess, to know that I consider myself a Bible man. I grew up in Nashville, and church, I was at every church service with my parents, my brother, 2 sisters. Every time the church doors opened, we were there on the front or the second row, and grew up reading the Bible and having devotionals, and later with my own 4 daughters and now grandkids. I mean, it's just a regular, very vital part of our lives. And yes, I'm an entertainer, and I love singing, and I've done rock and roll and heavy metal and country and all that other music. But I'm in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and most grateful about that. Some 20 to 23, 24 gospel albums, and I've been singing them all along the way, and had the first million-selling gospel or hymn album ever. But that was quite a long time ago. But I've been singing those songs even in my shows ever since. Did on TV and always. So in my own private times with God, I've thought of songs, things I'd like to sing, and if I didn't know of a song that did it, I would write down the idea. Sometimes one of the songs just sprang out of me. I was on my knees in the morning, and I just wanted to say how I really felt about Jesus, and out from my voice, my lips, sprang, "Rule and reign, mighty Jesus, rule and reign, sovereign Lord." And the next words, "For the kings of the earth have been brought low, and your name is exalted over all." Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. And I said, wait a minute, where did I ever hear that? And I realized I'd never heard it anywhere. And so I went ahead and finished it as a song, and we've recorded it. But then there's other worship songs. I call it legacy, because legacy is what you leave behind, and whether it's your reputation, whether it's financial, whether it's accomplishment, whatever it may be, but what you'd like people to remember. And so that's why I call this album that. That's what I would like people to know and experience from my own personal experience. So the only song on the album that I did not write is one my brother, Nick, who's been doing gospel music all his life, and his is more country and southern or traditional, but he wrote a beautiful song called "Savior Glorious," and I wanted people to know about Nick and his music and his soul, and so I had him record his own song, and I put it on my album. So, because I'd love part of my legacy is for people to know about Nick, my brother.
You know, it just occurred to me that we just got a private Pat Boone concert over the phone there as you were singing some of those songs.
No music, but just me.
Yeah, just you. That sounds fantastic. That's you've done in recent years. You did that tribute to the Ink Spots record, and you've also done that R&B album.
Oh yeah, the classics.
Right. You've done a lot of unique conceptual albums. The one I wanted to mention here, and I'm sure you might even be tired of talking about it, but it's your brief heavy metal career. Now, I got what you were doing, that you were taking these heavy metal songs and doing them in your own style. But
as music.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't, though.
No, there were those who thought, and still, Wikipedia and some of these things talk about me spoofing heavy metal music. That was the last thing I was doing. I had found quality songs. My own musicians, younger than I, we were in England several years back, and they said, we like doing your hits. People love them, but why don't we go in the studio and do something new together? And I said, guys, I've thought of that. I'd love to, but what can I do that I haven't done 10 times already? It'd be just a ho-hum, another album. And they said, well, you never did any heavy metal. And we laughed at the idea, the ridiculous idea I would do heavy metal. I mean, I had no regard for it and very little awareness. All I knew was I didn't like cacophony. I didn't like distortion. I didn't like screaming and music that was so loud and yelled that you couldn't even tell what it was saying.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, why would I do that? But as we joked about it for, a few weeks, my conductor, Dave Siebel, said, we've been kidding about you doing a heavy metal album, but, there are some good songs underneath all that noise that are really good tunes and good lyrics, some of them, and we could do those differently. I said, how? Well, maybe big band jazz. Well, I loved that thought immediately, and I said, well, get me some of the music. And when they did, and I heard Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train,
mm-hmm.
as goofy as it sounds, it's good social commentary about kids finding it hard to distinguish what's real and what isn't today because of hypocrisy, double standards, things changing, and the song says, I'm running off the rails on a crazy train. And I thought, boy, that's what is happening to a lot of young people today. And then Alice Cooper's song, No More Mr. Nice Guy, the lyric actually says, I went to church Sunday, I'm really a nice guy, but the preacher came up and punched me in the nose, so no more Mr. Nice Guy. And then Enter Sandman, Metallica. is about, I don't know how many people even knew it. It sounds so dark, foreboding, and mysterious. It's a father putting his son to bed and trying to use the time-honored method of scaring him into staying in bed. Otherwise, there's going to be something overhead going to get you, something underneath the bed.
Right.
And then you actually hear Hetfield, the lead singer, saying, "Now I lay me down to sleep," and a little kid says, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep," and saying the goodnight prayers with his little boy. I asked them later when I did the song, who was that little boy? Oh, it's one of our roadies kids. It wasn't one of their own. And my record, my own grandson does that. And we did a record that of their song they loved, that a big band, well, all the artists did, that somebody was treating their songs as real music, not just screaming loud metal music, but as songs that could be done a different way. They were thrilled. And in fact, some of the groups whose songs I didn't do were asking me, Aerosmith and Scorpion and Poison and groups like that were saying, "When are you going to do one of our songs? We got some for you." And they were serious, But we treated it all as serious music, fun, yes, and exciting and rocking, but serious. But Robert Hilburn, I think it is, a noted music critic, put it down because he thought I was trying to be a metal singer and wasn't quite getting there. Well, I was not trying to be a heavy metal singer. I was trying to treat their songs as worthy of a different kind of treatment.
Right.
And of course, everywhere I go now, every time I appear any place, it's the sound guys, the technicians, say, "I got you, heavy metal man. You're going to do smoke," and I do. I sometimes do Smoke on the Water. And we have a good arrangement of it. And Dweezil Zappa plays a Hendrix guitar, Stratocaster. Is actually his dad, Frank Zappa, had a authentic charred Hendrix guitar.
Wow.
So for some reason, these guys used to, I don't know if they still, they take perfectly good guitars after they played them in the show and then smash them to bits on stage and set fire to them. Like, I've never understood that. I've never done that. I never put a pair of my white buck shoes on fire on stage. I don't get it, but I did like the music.
No. You inadvertently started a trend because it was a few years later that Paul Anka did a record of grunge songs. Yeah, grunge and alternative. And Tom Jones also did some alternative songs. Oh, that's right, yeah. His way. And neither had that great success. Mine was, I'm descended from Daniel Boone, a pioneer. I think I have pioneered some things, and that was one thing. Even when it got me kicked off Christian television through their misunderstanding that I was not going over to the dark side. Right. Anyway, I did my research and found there was nothing wrong with any of those songs, and got it all explained, and I was back on Christian TV after a couple months. But to have done something nobody else ever thought of, and when your career has become so predictable, you bore yourself. It was fun to come up with something unusual. That was our guest today, Pat Boone, along with George Shearing, and a version of Stranger in Paradise, and that's on the new Duets album. And I should mention that patboone.com would probably be the easiest way for people to find out about the Duets collection and the Legacy collection, and to get those CDs. Yeah, and I so want people to have them, because this is the only place they can have them. Nobody else has these. This is from my own show, which I produced and owned. And so after all these years, wanting people to have enjoyed, or if they ever did see them, enjoy them again, we decided to put out this album. And because it's getting such great response, and it's a vinyl album as well, and vinyl, as you know, is enjoying a kind of a renaissance. People are wanting vinyl albums because
And even the manufacturers are having to put out new record players that can play 45s and 33 and a third, because audiophiles seem to think, I can't personally testify to it, but they seem to hear more. There seems to be a different sound coming from a vinyl record and a good needle and good speakers than maybe a more sterile, perfect sound from a CD and the digital. And so we put out the proudly monaural album, very well balanced music, because it was live on television.
Right.
You had to hear everything. And so now, because of the early success of this album, we have enough of these duets with so many other performers who were on with me that we could put out several more of these duets albums. And of course, duet things are in now.
Sure.
Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, even Barbra Streisand has done newly recorded duets albums. But mine, I did live.
Right.
Whatever blemishes, I did try to yodel with Roy Rogers, and I thought I did good. But he and my wife were both kidding me about my attempt to yodel with the King of the Cowboys. But I mean, it's a very, very entertaining album, and I'm glad to say that because of the early success, we're thinking about maybe 2 or 3 encores.
Well, Mr. Boone, it has been a great honor to speak with you. And once again, I want to remind everyone, patboone.com is the place to go, and be on the lookout for a sequel to that Duets album.
Yeah, and also I'm enlarging my presence on Facebook. We're up to, 70,000 to 80,000 likes and friends. And so Facebook, I'm finally catching up to the social media thing. I've actually tweeted a few times. My first tweet was singing "'Tis Tweet to be remembered, remembered," and then the next one was "Parting is such tweet sorrow."
Oh my goodness!
So I could go on, but you'd rather I not. But go to Facebook or patboone.com. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, man.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, now everybody's gonna